I don't know about you, but lately I've been feeling distracted, pulled in multiple directions, constantly overthinking, finding it hard to focus. And I just haven't been as happy or fulfilled as I normally would be. Then I realized why. I've been spending far too much time in the digital world. So I revisited a book that I read many years ago. It's Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, and it resonated with me more than ever. The question I want to answer in this video is why and how is excessive social media use destroying our ability to think, act, and live? And what should we do about it? How can we become digital minimalists so that we can maximize the areas of our life that matter? Now, before we dive in, something to remind you about. You probably already know this, but these social media platforms are intentionally designed to be addictive.
The founders of the great Silicon Valley spying empires like Facebook have publicly declared that they intentionally included addictive schemes in their designs.
The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works.
They're not competing for your data or for money. They're competing to keep people using the product.
This hijacking of our brains leads to a ton of bad outcomes, including the loss of intuitive decision making or loss of being able to think intuitively due to what I'm going to call mimetic overload, which we'll take a look at soon. Second, we're forgetting how to live. Live in the moment, live with others, and live with our own minds. And finally, we have a complete manipulation and almost neutralization of our dopamine reward system. So let's dive into each of these, and then we will look at the solution that Newport suggests in the book. René Girard was a French polymath, historian, and philosopher who contributed heavily to the study of psychology of desire. As Wikipedia states, Girard claimed that human desire functions imitatively or mimetically rather than arising as the spontaneous byproduct of human individuality, as much of the theoretical psychology had assumed. We like to think that we are completely free agents, that we do what we choose to do. But Girard's work shows us that, in fact, no, we are primarily creatures of imitation. Our desires are driven by imitation. Our choices are driven by imitation, or what he calls mimesis. In other words, desire is contagious, and this is an issue in the age of social media. It's actually an issue throughout human history, but especially now, because social media is mimesis on steroids. You open up Twitter and you see these success stories from entrepreneurs, authors, YouTubers, you name it, people who are doing amazing things, and you think, maybe I should do that too. Or you open up Instagram and you see the supercars and the Rolexes, and that influences your desire. You see the highlight reels from everybody's seemingly perfect life. And what this does, which a lot of people don't talk about, is it kind of kills your ability to figure out what you truly want, the goals that you should pursue, because you're constantly being bombarded by these micro deposits of influence that shape your desires in ways you cannot understand or quantify. This influence pulls you away from your core desires and your core intuition. As Luke Burgess writes in his book Wanting, which I highly recommend you check out if you want to understand more about mimesis, there are always models of desire. If you don't know yours, they are probably wreaking havoc in your life. Excessive time spent in the digital world pulls us away from living in the real world. And by live, I mean to be in the moment, to be present with others, to be present with yourself and the thoughts in your own head. We are plugged in all the time, and as a result, we lose something. We lose the opportunity for that spontaneous conversation with a stranger while we're waiting in line for our coffee. We lose the joy of a relaxing long walk without our phones, without music, without a podcast. We lose that special moment with our partner where we're just sitting there doing nothing, enjoying being in each other's presence. And it's really only been 2 decades since this digital world has completely taken over our lives. Sure, there were technologies before the smartphone that could distract us. We could sit down, watch television, play the early video game systems. but these were intermittent. Like you had to sit down and do them. But now we're plugged in all the time because we've got this amazing computer in our pockets. As Newport writes in the book, previous technologies that threatened solitude, from Thoreau's telegraph to Storr's car phone, introduced new ways to occasionally interrupt time alone with your thoughts, whereas the iPod provided for the first time the ability to be continuously distracted from your own mind. This continuous distraction from our own minds is not a good thing. There's no time for us to think, to ponder, to wrestle with the problems that we're facing. As Blaise Pascal famously put it, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. How much dopamine you experience from something depends on your baseline level of dopamine when you arrive there and your previous dopamine peaks. When we are constantly plugged into the matrix and we're scrolling TikTok or Instagram or checking Twitter, we raise our baseline level of dopamine and we experience these dopamine peaks, which means when it's time to do something productive or creative, like working on some music or doing some work tasks, we're just not as excited by it. And so it's harder for us to actually do that work. We are overstimulated and it shows. We read less, we focus less, we procrastinate more. A Gallup poll from 2022 shows that Americans are reading fewer books on average than they did between 2001 and 2016. Blogger and author Scott Young provides a good guess as to why this is. Reading books is a leisure activity that struggles to compete with the algorithmic engineering underlying most content. Reading a book, focusing on a work task, even watching a long-form YouTube video requires much more effort than simply picking up your phone and scrolling. But there's a second problem here, and that is that the digital world and our constant being plugged into it doesn't leave us with the opportunity to be bored. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, but why would I want to be bored? Well, boredom is a great way to figure out what you want, because boredom leads to curiosity and you become interested in things that wouldn't interest you otherwise if you were constantly suppressing that boredom. If we create the opportunities to be bored and we manage our dopamine reward system well, then we can really get interested in anything. There's an episode of the Andrew Huberman podcast where he interviews and talks to psychiatrist Anna Lemke. And she shares this example of a computer science student who hates the subject of computer science. He's just not interested, it's not what he thought it was, and he doesn't know what to do. But he's also playing video games for hours every day. He's looking for that thing that will excite him enough to pull him out of the video game world. But as Lemke explains, there's nothing that will do that because video games are engineered to keep you interested. They are engineered to be addictive. They are too powerful. There's nothing that will compare to that. Computer science lectures stand no chance compared to an engaging video game. And so she explains to the student that you need to abstain from video games. You need to just stop playing them for a bit. And so he does. And what happens, she says this happens invariably with other people in similar situations. What happens is the student becomes interested in computer science. They like it. They're curious about it. They want to learn more. Why? Because they are no longer bombarding their reward pathways with high dopamine drugs like video games. Newport suggests in his book doing a digital declutter. This is something intentional, it's something sudden, because as he explains, a rapid transformation is going to work better than gradually engineering habit change, especially with something as addictive as phone or social media. There's 3 simple steps. The first step is to define your technology rules. He says to put aside a 30-day period in which you will take a break from optional technologies. What are optional technologies? Well, as Newport says, consider the technology optional unless its temporary removal would harm or significantly disrupt the daily operation of your professional or personal life. He also says, do not confuse convenient with critical. Just because a software, an app, something on your phone is convenient, it doesn't mean it's critical. You can do without certain things, especially if they have a net negative. So maybe you use Instagram for messaging people, but every time you go on Instagram, you just scroll for like 20 minutes. It's probably a net negative, and you could message those people on another medium. And then for anything that is critical, that's not optional, that you need to keep, you need to use for work or life, whatever, create operating procedures for doing so. Rules, basically, boundaries. So it might be that, you're addicted to Netflix, and so you decide, I'm only going to watch Netflix if I'm with others. Or I'm only going to listen to podcasts while I'm driving or walking. For me, one operating procedure I have is that I don't follow anyone on Instagram now. I just use it as an output device. I post reels, short form videos, and I don't look at anyone's stories or whatever. Well, that's a lie. Occasionally I'll check the For You page, but most of the time I don't. I'm just using it as an output device. The second step is to take a 30-day break and fill the time you once spent on social media, on your phone, with high quality leisure activities. As Newport writes, you want to explore and rediscover activities and behaviors you find satisfying and meaningful. You should aggressively explore higher quality activities to fill in the time left vacant by the optional technologies you are avoiding. This period should be one of strenuous activity and experimentation. Take up a new hobby, do something physical, work through a book that you've always been intimidated by, like this one I have right here. She's big. This is a tome. I haven't got to it yet, but one day I will. The more seriously you take this pursuit of high quality leisure activities, the more likely you are to remain a digital minimalist, because what you'll find is that you start doing these things and they're actually far more satisfying and rewarding than just spending time on social media. And so eventually you actually prefer to do these things than be on your phone. And I love this quote from the book. For many people, their compulsive phone use papers over a void created by a lack of a well-developed leisure life. The third step is to reintroduce technology. At the end of this break, you can start to reintroduce these optional technologies back into your life from a blank slate, but you want to be intentional about it. As Newport writes, to allow an optional technology back into your life at the end of the declutter, it must serve something you deeply value. Offering some benefit is not enough. Be the best way to use technology to serve this value. If it's not, replace it with something better. Have a role in your life that is constrained with a standard operating procedure that specifies when and how you use it. And if it doesn't fit those criteria, then you probably shouldn't reintroduce it at all. So that is the digital declutter. Define your technology rules. What are the optional technologies? Take a 30-day break and go do other stuff. Explore, take up a hobby, read more books, go to the gym more, whatever it may be. And then at the end of that, you can reintroduce with intentionality some of those optional technologies if you choose to do so. It is time for us to embrace digital minimalism so that we can benefit from life maximalism. I hope you will join me on that journey. Now, one final note. Despite the fact that I just talked about escaping the digital world, I do have to mention that I have a weekly newsletter filled with high quality, in-depth insights on how you can be more productive and perform better as a human being, an entrepreneur, creator, whatever you may be. You can sign up for that in the description below. I would love to have you inside. Thanks for watching. See you later.